What's up guys, it's Spruce Goose here, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to beat any Cover 2 defense in Madden. Cover 2 is one of those coverages that you're always going to run into when you play online because it's one of the most common defenses in football, and it does a pretty good job of locking up most routes that people usually like throwing. However, there's one simple concept that absolutely shreds Cover 2, and it'll have your opponents picking a different coverage in no time. Now this is the first video I'm doing on how to beat a certain coverage, so if you guys end up enjoying it and want to see more breakdowns of how to beat other coverages in Madden, don't forget to hit that like button to let me know that these are the kinds of videos you guys want to see. Alright, let's get into it. So the first step in beating Cover 2 is actually understanding it. A typical Cover 2 has 3 defenders covering short across the middle, 2 cornerbacks covering the flats, and 2 safeties each covering a deep half of the field. Now when looking for weaknesses in this coverage, your first instinct might be to say that corner routes are going to be open since the outside cornerbacks are covering the flats. And that's fair, sometimes corner routes do work against Cover 2, but that leads us to needing to take a closer look at the different types of flat concepts a cornerback can play. The easiest flat concept to understand is the hard flat. If a cornerback is playing a hard flat, it means he'll lock up anything short and near the sideline, and he won't leave that area. Hard flats are what you typically want to use in short yardage situations, especially if you know your opponent likes throwing routes to the sideline, like zigs and out routes. If your opponent's cornerbacks are playing in the hard flats, then yes, corner routes will be open. However, a lot of Cover 2 plays aren't going to have hard flats. The most common flat concept we see in Cover 2 is the cloud flat. Cloud flats can cover both short and deep on the outside, with deep outside coverage having the priority. That means if only one route comes into that cornerback zone, he's going to guard it whether it's short or deep, and if 2 routes come into his zone, he's going to cover the deep route. The third type of flat concept is called the soft squat, which we don't see as often, but it can be extremely effective in certain situations. The soft squat will convert to man coverage on deep routes, except that he'll come back underneath if something like an out route comes into his zone. So just like a cloud flat, the soft squat is able to cover both short and deep routes on the outside, but the soft squat is going to give priority to the short routes. So to get back to our discussion on corner routes, the fact that we don't know before the snap what kind of flat concepts our opponent's cornerbacks are playing means throwing corner routes against Cover 2 is going to be extremely risky, and we're going to want to find another way to attack this coverage. Now as some of you probably already know, the weakest point of a Cover 2 is going to be the deep middle. The reason the deep middle is so weak is that each safety has to cover an entire half of the field. So for either one of them to cover the deep middle would require them to leave the rest of their deep half completely open. Now there are a lot of different routes that can put a receiver in the deep middle of the field, but one route does it better than the rest, and that is the seam route. If you find a play that has a seam route with an inside slot receiver, then I can almost guarantee it'll be open against Cover 2. It's usually going to work best if the seam route is being run by the inside slot receiver and you've got 3 receivers on one side of the ball. Some examples of plays with seam routes like this are dig and go, and Salem out of the gun tray open formation, fake screen wheel out of the gun tray wide flex formation, and deep in out of the gun wide trips weak formation. And there are plenty of other plays out there too that'll work. It's not super important which play you pick, you just have to make sure you have that seam route from an inside slot receiver. For this video, I'm going to be using the play Z under out of the gun tray Y ISO formation, which is in the Bengals, Rams, and Redskins playbooks. So here's Z under without any adjustments, and we're going against random Cover 2 coverages on defense. What's crazy is that we can run this play completely stock without any adjustments at all, and already our inside slot receiver is getting open in the middle of the field on that seam route. Now you have some leeway in how you throw the ball. If you've got a slower receiver, then you're going to want to throw a bullet pass and use the left analog stick to either lead him downfield or to his left a little bit. Right now I'm using Tyler Boyd, who only has 89 speed, but this just goes to show that this will work with pretty much any receiver. Now there are a few adjustments we can make to have this seam route open up even more and just make this play better overall. So what we're going to do is put both of our outside receivers on streaks and take our other slot receiver and put him on a drag. With the outside receivers on streaks, the safeties are going to drift even more toward the sidelines and the seam is going to open up even more over the middle. The reason for putting the slot receiver on a drag is to just have a dump off in case your opponent blitzes and you need to get the ball out quickly. Also with regards to blitzes, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering if this is going to work against Cover 2 Sync, the nano blitz out of the Big Dime 146 formation, and it absolutely does. All you have to do in that case is block your running back and make sure he's on the same side of the field as the blitzing defensive back. But as you guys can see, this seam route is just going to get wide open for us every single time. Another thing to note is that if you have a really fast receiver, like someone with 95 speed or higher, then your life just got even easier. Put them in as your inside slot receiver and wait a little bit longer on the route, and then throw a lob pass and just let them run under it. This is John Ross, who has 97 speed, and he's beating the Patriots safeties easily. Now if your opponent is smart, he's going to start using the safety to cover that seam route, but there are two ways we can counter this. First, if he's really committing to guarding the seam route and sitting with his safety in the middle of the field, remember we've got our outside receiver on a streak who's going to be wide open without that safety guarding the sideline. To be extra safe, you're going to want to throw the ball to the receivers outside just to make sure the safety can't get there. If your opponent is using the safety, but he's kind of sitting in between the seam route and the outside streak, you should be able to still hit the seam route as long as you lead him away from the safety. And of course, if that throw's a little too risky, you can always just hit your drag route underneath for a guaranteed 6 to 8 yards. Also, if your opponent decides to try and defend this by using his middle linebacker to cover the seam, go ahead and hit that drag route, which is going to be wide open. So far we've only been running plays in the middle of the field where we have a lot of space to work with, but another great thing about this seam route is that it works just as well near the end zone. All you have to do is let your receiver clear the middle linebacker and then throw a bullet pass to the inside. The only difference in how I run this play near the end zone is that I put the other slot receiver on a streak as well and put the outside receiver on a drag. If your opponent covers the seam, the drag should still be open for a 5 or 6 yard gain. Now, while I was still working on making this video, I actually played against someone online who is playing cover 2 almost every single play, and figured this was the perfect time to test out if what I'm teaching you guys actually works. I wasn't using Z under, but I did have another play with a seam route, and once I knew he was in cover 2, I put my outside receiver on a streak and figured either the seam or the outside streak would be open. At the snap, I saw him using the inside slot receiver on the seam, so I threw it to my outside receiver on the streak, who was wide open. However, later in the game, I ran the exact same play to a very different result. Once again, he used my inside slot receiver on the seam route, but this time, to my complete surprise, his outside cornerback stayed with my receiver all the way up the sideline. I was dumbfounded, but I didn't give it a ton of thought until after the game. It turned out that after that first play where I hit my outside receiver on the streak, he started making a pre-snap adjustment to put his outside cornerback in a deep third. If I had recognized this during the game, I could have gotten easy yards on that side of the field by putting my receiver on something like an out route or a curl. But in the moment, I had just assumed that since my play worked the first time, it would keep working again and again. This is an important reminder for all of us, myself included, that good opponents will make adjustments over the course of the game, so we need to be constantly adapting to their adjustments with our own. That's why, as fun as it is to learn money plays and one-play touchdowns, I really think it's important to work towards developing a fundamental understanding of how all the different coverages in Madden work, because then, in theory, you should be able to beat any defense in the game. But anyway guys, those are my thoughts on how to beat cover 2 in Madden. If you think I missed anything, or if you have your own way of beating cover 2, leave a comment below and tell me how you do it. Or stop by during one of my Twitch streams, maybe I can try out your method in a game. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.